Part 1. The Origins of the Celts, from Hallstatt to Laten. Long before the Romans marched across Europe, long before Christian monks wrote the sagas of Ireland, there were the Celts. Their story began in the heart of Central Europe, in the valleys and forests near the Danube River. Around 800 BCE, the culture we now call Hallstatt took root, named after a lakeside village in Austria, where salt mines preserved treasures of their world. The Hallstatt people were miners, metal workers, and traders. They forged strong iron weapons and ornate jewelry, buried their chieftains in grand barrows with wagons, feasts, and golden torques. Their wealth came from salt, the white gold of the ancient world, which they traded far and wide. Centuries later, around 450 BCE, a new flowering emerged, the Laten culture. Named after a lakeshore site in Switzerland, it was marked by spirals, flowing lines, and intricate designs carved into swords, shields, and ornaments. This was the high art of the Celts, alive with symbolism and mystery. From these roots, the Celts spread across Europe. They were not a single nation, but many tribes, bound by language, culture, and a fierce love of freedom. From the forests of Gaul to the coasts of Iberia, from the Alps to the misty isles of Britain and Ireland, the Celts carried their spirit into every land they touched. Part 2. Myths and the Other World. Gods, Heroes, and Druids. The Celts lived in two worlds, the visible and the unseen. Their myths spoke of the other world, a realm both close and distant, where gods and spirits dwelled, where the dead feasted in eternal halls, and where time flowed differently. At the heart of their pantheon was the Dagda, the good god, master of abundance and wisdom, carrying a cauldron that never emptied and a harp that controlled the seasons. There was Lug of the long arm, bright and skilled in every art, the warrior king whose spear never missed, and the dark goddess Morrigan, a shapeshifter of ravens and shadows who presided over battle and fate. The Tuatha Dé Danann, a race of shining beings, were said to have descended from the skies into Ireland, bringing with them treasures of magic and power. Their stories mingled with those of heroes like Cuchulainn and Fionn mac Cumhaill, whose deeds filled the sagas with wonder. Guardians of these mysteries were the Druids. More than priests, they were judges, healers, poets, and keepers of memory. They carried no books, for their knowledge was spoken, preserved in verse and ritual. They knew the cycles of the stars, the ways of the oak and mistletoe, the hidden paths between worlds. To the Celts, Druids were bridges between the mortal and the divine. Part 3. Warriors of the tribes, the fierce Celtic spirit. The Celts were famed as warriors, their courage both admired and feared. Greek and Roman writers described them as tall, wild-haired, their bodies painted with bright colors, sometimes with blue woad that made them seem otherworldly in battle. They wore golden torques around their necks, symbols of pride and status.
Part 4. Celtic Lands and Peoples, from Gaul to Ireland. By the height of their power, the Celts stretched across much of Europe. In Gaul, the lands of modern France, great tribes like the Aedui and Arverni built strongholds upon high hills, their markets buzzing with trade, their warriors ready to defend their honor. In Britain, tribes ruled over fertile fields and sacred groves. Here, Druids held great authority, guiding both kings and common folk, teaching that the forests and rivers themselves were holy. In Ireland, The Celts found a land of deep green and stone, where myths grew like roots through every hill. Unlike Gaul, Ireland would never fall to Rome. Its legends survived, preserved by poets and monks, telling of warriors, gods, and journeys to the otherworld. Farther south, the Celts reached Spain, known to the ancients as Celtiberians, fierce fighters who resisted Roman conquest for generations. In the east, they wandered into the Balkans and even into Asia Minor, where a people called the Galatians settled near what is now Turkey. Though diverse, these Celtic peoples shared bonds of language, art, and belief. They were a web of tribes across Europe, united not by empire, but by spirit. Part 5. The Coming of Rome, Conquest and Resistance. Rome saw the Celts first as enemies, then as obstacles, and finally as subjects. After the burning of Rome by Celtic raiders, the memory of humiliation haunted the Republic. Centuries later, Julius Caesar sought both vengeance and glory. In his Gallic Wars, Caesar led legions against the tribes of Gaul. He described their bravery, their chieftains, their Druids, and their fierce resistance. Yet Rome's discipline and strategy wore them down. The greatest of their leaders was Vercingetorix of the Arverni. Charismatic and proud, he united tribes against Rome, defying Caesar's might. At the Battle of Alesia in 52 BCE, he fought with all his strength, but the Roman legions built walls within walls, encircling both the Celts and those who came to aid them. Starved and surrounded, Vercingetorix surrendered. Bound in chains, he was paraded in Rome before being executed, a symbol of Celtic defiance, broken but unforgettable. In Britain, resistance lasted longer. Queens like Boudica of the Iceni rose against Rome, burning towns and terrifying legions. But one by one, the tribes fell. Only Ireland and the far highlands of Scotland remained free, where Roman eagles never fully conquered. Part 6. The Legacy of the Celts, from ancient tribes to modern myths. Though Rome subdued their lands, the Celts never vanished. Their traditions endured in hidden valleys, in the chants of Druids remembered, in stories whispered by poets. In Ireland and Wales, monks recorded the old sagas, preserving myths of Cuchulainn, of Fionn and his warriors, of gods who once ruled the earth. These tales became the backbone of medieval legend, flowing into the great cycles of Arthurian romance, where Druids became wizards and Celtic heroes merged with knights. In art, the Celts left spirals and knots, endless patterns without beginning or end, carved into stone crosses, illuminated manuscripts, and jewelry that still glimmers today. Their music lingered in pipes and harps, their festivals lived on in Samhain, which became All Hallows' Eve, Halloween. Even now, the Celtic spirit breathes in Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Brittany, Galicia, in languages, in music, in stories of fairies and warriors. Though empires rose and fell, the Celts live on, not as conquerors, but as a people of myth, of legend, and of memory. Their Druids still walk in stories, their warriors still ride in dreams, and their spirals still remind us that history is never a straight line, but a circle, eternal and unbroken.